Hello guys and girls, welcome to part 3 of my Slade history video, which I am telling you right now. I have done parts 1 and 2 already. Part 1 is the origins of the band in the 60s and their early years, actually the 1960s period to the first 2 years in the 70s, and then part 2, as you've just seen now, is about your Slade, during and what happened during the whole of the 1970s. Well, most of it, actually. And now we are going to do. We are now in the history of Slade. We are now on the 1980s now, and also plus the early 90s as well, and also what all the band members did after the original band broke up. But anyway, that takes us on now to 1980. The band were on the verge, on the edge of breaking up. And also, I'll mention this again. Dave Hill, actually, to try to provide money for his family and make a bit of money, used his own Rolls Royce to drive couples to their weddings, and then there was one part, well, there was a bit where he recalled where he said, and then he said, so I said to our manager Chaz, I think we're gonna have to leave and do this, she says, and he said, oh, and also he thought it was a good idea, but then suddenly the next week he phoned up 1 week later and he said, I've had enough. But he said, it's funny how all these things came about, you know. Oh, anyway, and also he was on the verge of leaving the band as well. And so yeah. But anyway, moving on. Later on in the year, the band hadn't seen each other for quite a long time, until suddenly they get this phone call from Reading Festival to tell them that Ozzy Osbourne, who had left Black Sabbath the year before and turned solo, obviously, was going to perform with his solo band as the first act at Reading Festival in 1980. At Reading Festival in 1980, but then afterwards, unexpectedly, they had to cancel their performance, and Slade got offered their concert slot. I know the majority of the band accepted to do the show, except for Dave. He was the one who was against it. But I mean, like, you know, he didn't want to do it. Didn't have anything to do with it. He was a bit adamant, and he refused until Chaz Chandler phoned him up and said, "Hey," "Hey, Davey, are you thinking about it, Davey?" And he was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yep, I'm thinking about it." And then afterwards, something was twitching him about that, and also when Chaz was on the phone, and Chaz talked him into it, because I'll mention again, he was originally going to leave the band, so he talked him into it, you know, just in case if he wanted to leave the band, this would be the show for him to go out in a big way. But then, yep, we're doing the show, Reading Festival, 65,000 rock fans. It'll be a good way for you to go out in a big way. And then afterwards he accepted it. Then afterwards, Reading Festival, August 1980, that was the moment that Slade and their career was very unexpectedly rejuvenated and revived. Yep, they got a very big buzz from the place, and also, Noddy Holder put it this way, it was going to be right for the band to play at Reading that day. So yep, they went on stage, August 1980, Reading Festival, for 45 minutes. Yep, they went from no hope to a very big, huge, we're back, big time, and also they got exactly what they needed, and then overnight they were deemed cool again and became became popular again from then on.
Hello guys and girls, here is a photo of the band from the Reading Festival from 1980. Yep, as I said before, went on stage in 45 minutes, went from a no hope to a huge, they were back big time. And from this moment on, for their revival, their new audience was a heavy metal audience.
And yep, Dave Hill could not sleep. Couldn't sleep on the way, but you're coming home from the concert thinking about what he just did, and he was about to leave the band. And also, because of this newfound success, to capitalise on it, Slade, the month afterwards, actually 2 months afterwards, hurriedly released a extended play called Live at Reading, which also had their first UK chart action since October 1977. And then afterwards, I'll just quickly mention this, I forgot to mention this. After the band came back from America in '77, they got dropped. And the band left Polydor Records, or got fired, and then signed with Chaz Chandler's own Barn Records, and that is the record label what they did in the late 70s for their singles and albums. And also afterwards the band signed to their label, to a label owned by Jim Lee and his brother Frank, called Cheapskate Records. And because of this newfound success, they hurriedly released an extended play a month to 2 months later called Live at Reading, which reached number 44 in the UK, and it was the band's first chart action in the UK since My Baby Left Me, That's Alright Mama, in October 1977. It was their first chart action since October 77, and then afterwards they released another EP called Christmas Earbender, which peaked at number 70, and also Polydor Records, their 1970s record label, also capitalised on their success, and also released the compilation. It was called Slade Smashes.
And here is the cover for it. And what did I tell you? I tell you, the band really smashed it, mate. Everyone, look there, smashed it. On the cover, fabulous one, eh? Great album cover, eh? Fantastic.
Slade Smashes, it was given plenty of fabulous promotion. On that album, it had many of Slade's hits from their first peak in the 70s, and success in the 70s, and also a few songs from the band's down period in the second half of the 70s as well. And that was a very successful album, and then that reached number 20. That reached number 20 on the charts, and also the band's new audience was after they revived in 1980, heavy metal fans. Ooh yeah, way, yep. Well, anyway, January 1981, they released a very, very brand new single which is aimed at a very fabulous heavy metal audience called "We'll Burn the House Down."
And here is the single cover for you. Well, anyway, and still, this is one of the covers for that single, and quite simply, but still great.
And the idea for that song came from when the band were touring in Amsterdam after a performance, and and there was and the audience at the venue was very enthusiastic and would not go home at all. And Jim Lee overheard chanting, who was downstairs in the back, in the dressing room actually, and that's when they realised that the chant had a potential. So they wrote it, released it in January 1981, and it peaked at number 10 in the UK, which was their first top 10 hit since 1975, with Thanks for the Memory.
Yeah, man. Well, by the way, we've got quite a few images to show today, guys and gals. Folks, this image, what you're seeing now, is an image of Slade performing We'll Bring the House Down on Top of the Pops in January 1981.
Anyway, also 2 months later, they released a very brand new album as well called of the same name, We'll Bring the House Down.
Here is the cover for We'll Bring the House Down, with the sword and shield in Slade's hand ripping through it. The idea for this cover came from Chaz Chandler, and he came up and possibly drew on the cover. So yeah.
Which was a mix of tracks, which had a few new tracks, We'll Bring the House Down, and a few others, mixed with some recycled songs from their last album, Return to Base.
Just in case if you haven't seen it, here is the Return to Base album cover. Quite simple cover, actually, just with the band's name, the title, and and 4 dots on a red background. Simply. Well, anyway, back to the video
as well, which I'm going to talk about in a second. So yeah, the band is now back popular again, back in the charts, back on television, and also touring larger venues once again, and also being very, very quite successful as well, which is fab. Well, anyway, and anyway, the band released another single about a few months later, Wheels Ain't Coming Down, which was originally off their Return to Base album, and it actually, but since it was off the new album, it wasn't like that as well received as the previous single, but and also since it had a lighter rock sound to it, but yet again, this song was originally released before Slade became hard rock and heavy metal in the early 80s as well, so yep, that's one point of it. Well, and also, but it kept the momentum going for the band until they released a second album in 1981, later on in 1981, which I will be coming on to momentarily. And also in 1981 there is in May 1981 the band released another single which was going to come out on the forthcoming album months later. It was called Knuckle Sandwich Nancy.
Oh, yum! What a sandwich! Anybody fancy a sandwich, anyone? Well, anyway, I'm joking. Here's the cover for Slade's Knuckle Sandwich Nancy. You got your fist and finger paws in a sandwich. Yummy. I wonder what that'll taste like.
Which was I'm going to explain about it. The lyrics refer to an incident a few years before. In August 1978, the band were playing at a club in South Wales, and there was 2 bouncers called the Desmond Brothers who begun being very aggressive with the fans, and then Noddy Holder told them to lay off, and then one of them replied to Noddy, I'll see you after the show, and then afterwards And then afterwards, as soon as he was going back to the dressing room, the bouncer attacked him. And then he was lying on the floor, all covered in blood, broken nose and 2 black eyes. But then, and he was taken to the nearest hospital to be treated. And Noddy pressed charges against the bouncer, and then he got jailed for 3 months afterwards. And also there was also a rumour as well that the same bouncer who got sent to jail got beaten up by Richie Blackmore at a rainbow show as well. So yeah, and that's a bit of your history about where that came from. So yeah, that got released in 1981. It was eagerly wanted by the band as a single, but Chandler and the band's record, Chandler was not really convinced of its potential, and I'll put it this way, it was half-heartedly released and it flopped. And at the time, this was the final straw between Chas Chandler as manager and the band. This was the final straw, and it flopped. The band blamed him for the failure, and then afterwards, he I think the Chandler left afterwards as their manager, and then afterwards Slade begun to manage themselves afterwards, and also they had people taking care of the business side of things, but the main decisions were taken by the band as well. And also, well, actually, the band parted, and Chandler parted friendly. Chandler on friendly terms, or amicable terms. Chandler sold his share of the co-owned independent label, which was originally owned by him, and Jim and Frank Lee, called Cheapskate Records. Sorry, my camera went off. Yeah, quite a lot of history to talk about, so I could make it a 4-part video, but I think we'll see what happens. Anyway, back to the video. Well, anyway, he sold his share of Cheapskate Records, and he negotiated with RCA a very favourable deal for the band, which means Slade would get their first major label in 4 years. Yippee! And this new deal meant that Slade Records would get worldwide release except in America and Canada, and all the UK singles were released, would still be released under the Cheapskate label, but RCA would press and distribute all the records. So yeah, well, anyway, late 1981, the band released a new album called Till Death Do Us Part.
Oh yes, look at this cover. Great, eh? Well, anyway, this is the original cover of Till Death Do Us Part. There's an alternate cover with a photograph of the band, but this one has got an ear with a pin sticking in it. Great, eh? Well, anyway, next clip.
Which had the original cover had a picture of an ear with a pin sticking in it, and then that was a controversial cover, so they changed it to a picture of the band. Well, anyway, also 2 months before, the band recorded and released a new single called "Lock Up Your Daughters," which continued in a more heavy metal sound, and it reached number 29 in the UK.
And before your eyes, the cover of "Lock Up Your Daughters." Well, one of them actually, and also this was the first Slade single to be released by RCA as well. So yeah.
As well, and also, did you know, when the band performed that song on Top of the Pops, a couple of times in 1981. It clashed with Jaws and Earthquake. Two 1970s big blockbuster movies on ITV at the time, and also this caused a temporary short, just a very very short backlash in sales and what have you. And then also the parent album, Till Death Do Us Part, came out later on in November, and it reached number 68 in the UK. It wasn't that successful commercially as the previous album, but it still sold very very well, actually, mind you, as well. And also the band toured throughout 1981-82 with their newfound success, and also they played Donington for the second Donington Festival in 1981.
We've got a few photos to show you. First, here is the bill for Monsters of Rock Donington 1981, an overall stronger lineup than 1980, and also by some. And also here's the second image with Noddy Holder at Donington, and also here is the third image with Slade entertaining the heavy metal troops as well. So yeah, because they were the act to get the crowd going on the day. A few of this I'll explain in the video as well. So yeah, but anyway, back to the video. What I meant by they were the act to get the crowd going on the day was they were the first act to get the crowd going, and the only act to get them going during the daytime.
On a bill headlined, there was AC/DC, Whitesnake, Blue Oyster Cult, Slade, Blackfoot and more. That was the whole lineup, and the band really well received, actually, and they were the only band during the day which entertained the troops, got the crowd going during the day as well. So yep. Well anyway, and also, for the very first time, RCA re-released Merry Christmas Everybody, which got re-released for the first time since its initial outing back in '73. Although, from this release onwards to several throughout the '80s, and then downloads, returns to the charts in 2007 onwards, it got to different positions. In 1981, it managed to reach 32. 1982, the band released two more singles called Ruby Red in March.
Here is the cover for you. Look at that cover from Castle Donington itself. Fantastic. Another picture of it, eh? Well, anyway, back to the video.
And also they got a brand new opener to replace Heamy Colin, which was their long time. It was either Heamy Colin or Dizzy Mama as an opener for each concert. It was called Rock and Roll Preacher. Yep, it was released in, sorry, I've got an inch on my arm. It was released in Germany in April, and it was the first Slade single to be a 12-inch, and also reached number 49, while Ruby Red reached number 51. And also, it was a gatefold release and had 2 extra live tracks on it, so yep. Well anyway, and also 1982 was another successful year for Slade, and also had plenty of fabulous touring and promotion. Well anyway, 1983 was completely forgot to mention these two things. I'll talk about it properly when we get into 1983. 1982, they recorded a single in November in late 1982 called "And the Waltz, C'est la Vie."
Here we are, I've got two things of interest to show you. First, here is the Waltz C'est la Vie cover single, which has the band on here, sitting in some random unknown field with what looks like a black backdrop, and if I'm correct. And also the second image is the cover of which I'll talk about pretty soon. It is their third live album. And can you notice your Slade on Stage, the first three letters covered in red? It spells SOS.
Which was released in November, near around Christmas, but it only managed to but it only made number 50 in the UK. But it was a hit in a few European countries like Poland. It reached the top 2. And also they re-released the Hokey Cokey as well, but didn't really make any impact, actually. And then later on in December, Slade released their third and final live album called Slade on Stage, which peaked at number 58 in the UK, and that one was recorded on a show which was at Newcastle City Hall on their 1981 tour as well. So, yep, there we go. And also Jim Lee as well, alongside Slade. He also since the late 70s, as a side project, worked on many side projects despite Slade's rising fortunes back at the time. And anyway, we move into 1983. 1983, the RCA Records sent them away to write songs for their next album to be considered for release in 1983, and then these two songs came back, and then there were possible singles for release, and then afterwards they were really well received by RCA, and then afterwards, and there was a raw demo of Noddy Holder singing one of them, which I'll reveal pretty soon. And then afterwards, RCA put the band together with a new producer called John Punter, whose methods were different from what Slade were used to. When Slade recorded their 1983 album, The Amazing Kamikaze Syndrome, it was called in most of the world, except in America, where it was called Keep Your Hands Off My Power Supply.
Oh yeah. Well, anyway, I've got two covers for the album to show you. I might as well show you them anyway. Here is the first cover of the Amazing Kamikaze Syndrome. It's in some sort of electronic world or realm or void with some person from Japan or China praying possibly to some electronic god. And here is the second cover, which was Keep Your Hands Off My Power Supply. Essentially the same album, but got a couple of reworked tracks on there. It was released in America and Canada with this under this name and with this cover, and it's got a guitar neck with ladies' fingers on it. Playing it, doing the great old cool rock and rolling, yeah. Well, anyway.
Punter's methods were different because instead of the band recording all together, he got the band to record everything separately and then the band gave it the thumbs up approval. Yep, that got recorded in 1983. It was originally going to be released in February 1984, but it got released in November. It got pushed forward to November 1983, and I'll explain why. And also, the first single from that album was the ballad "My Oh My."
Speaking of My oh my. My oh my indeed. Look at this cover. Look at this cover. Yep, that girl's hair on the cover is smoking. Smoking on fire, baby. Woohoo! Yep. Yep, here it is. And also it says Top Hit England on there as well.
Which was the first single off the album. And also, it got released in November 1983. It slowly climbed up the chart. It started in the 70s. It started at about in about in about. It started about in the seven. It started in about. It started in about. Oh yeah, My Oh My. My Oh My, the single came out in on November 11th, 1983, and it got released for the and also that became Slade's very first second top 10 single in second top 10 single of the 80s, and also their first top 5 singles since first single to reach higher than 3 since Merry Christmas Everybody, actually, in 1973. And also the first single to reach higher than 3 since Everyday as well. So, yep. Well, anyway, My Oh My, the singles chart run, it begun very lowly in the charts, I'll have to tell you, at number 73. But then the next week afterwards, but then over the next 2 weeks, it slowly went into the top 40. The second week it was at number 36. The third week it was at number 15, and then afterwards, after that, it was in the top 10 for 5 weeks.
Alright, guys and gals, here are some shots from the My Oh My music video. This first one, I picked it as a funny photo to start off with. Snoddy Holder on the song, on the video, where he goes like, "Oh yeah," before the lorry starts driving off into the night, and with the band playing, he's a shot of them playing on the back of a truck. And then after driving through the night, the truck somehow ends up somewhere in London, but I don't know where, probably the Docklands, probably, or Wembley Stadium. Here is a shot of Noddy Holder. You're getting the crowd to wave along. Fabulous image. Here's another shot of him on there. He's going like, "Now let's all pull together, my oh my." And this next shot is of the person who drove the lorry, ended up to be a woman, and she's having a jive onto the music. And the music video ended with this shot of a choir voice going like, "Ah!" And then this last image is of the band performing the single in November, December 1983 on top of the Pops.